And now we are admitting everyone. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Silver Spring Blues Week. I'm Lisa Martin with Silver Spring Town Center. We're so happy to have you joining us for Sweet Bitter Blues special book talk with our esteemed authors, Frank Matheis and Phil Wiggins, the awesome Phil Wiggins, who will also be performing in addition to telling his amazing stories about DC's own blues scene. Such a wonderful history in this book. We are recording live, and you can watch it on our Facebook page. But I would like to also introduce, we have Silver Spring Blues Week happening all week long till Saturday. I would like to introduce our host of our Blues Festival every year and the host of our virtual Blues Week, the wonderful WPFW, don't forget the blues, Miss Ida Campbell. Take it away, Ida. Let us know what's going on.
Hey, everybody. It's so good to see everyone. Normally, I would see you down at the plaza where all the music and all the happenings are going on, but we'll be back there next year. I can't wait to get there. And so this is our 12th annual Silver Spring Blues Festival. It's still happening, even though it's virtual. We want to welcome each and every one of you for being here. And I tell you, we have so much going on. We started out on the 9th of June with Bobby Rush, Millie Jackson, Mark Winter, and Jay Summerall. We did a fantastic talk. I think it was Jay that played his harmonica a little bit, but I'm gonna tell you something, we had a really, really good time. And so what we have going on, yesterday we had Blues Through Poetry and open mic. That was phenomenal. Tonight we're having Sweet Bitter Blues, Washington, D.C.'s own blues, with authors Frank Matheis and Phil Wiggins. They're going to perform in and out, talking about the book, okay? And then the rest of the week, tomorrow, we're going to have movie night with the Crossroads. It's the post-film discussion hosted by Professor David Rothman of Montgomery College. And then Thursday, we're going to have Silver Spring Blues Festival comedy show. We've never had that before. Oh my gosh, it's going to, look, we need all the laughs we can get, don't you think? Okay, we're going to have Chip Jones, also of WPFW, Hayward, Turnip Seed, heading and featuring the group Ritu. I'm going to mess up that last name, so I'm not going to say it. Ed Smythe, Rachel Dunbar, John Yeager, and Marcus Brown, and Camilla. I think I said that wrong, but we'll get there. And then on Friday, we're going to have the Archie Edwards Blues Heritage Ensemble. And then Saturday from 2 to 3, the Bobby Thompson Band. And then also on Saturday from 4 to 5, Times a Change in the studio with artist Winston Harris. It is, Lisa, it's a full packed week.
Yes, it is, Ida. It's an awesome week we have planned, and you were pleasantly surprised, I think, last night with Blues Through Poetry. Wasn't it awesome?
Yeah.
We have some amazing poets, And tonight we have some amazing writers and storytellers. In addition to being a stellar musician, Phil Wiggins. Phil Wiggins is the recipient of the NEA National Heritage Fellowship from 2017, the highest honor of the U.S. that the U.S. bestows on traditional arts. He is also a 2020 State of Maryland Heritage Fellow. He is a two-time winner of the prestigious Handy Blues Award in 1984 for Best Traditional Album of the Year, and in 1987 as Entertainers of the Year. He played the White House for Bill and Hillary Clinton, performing with B.B. King. Can you imagine what an honor? Matheis and Wiggins played Carnegie Hall, Royal Prince Albert Hall in London, and the Sydney Opera House, both small venues worldwide. What an awesome career you've had thus far, and it's not over. And Phil's recorded more than a dozen critically acclaimed albums, including on Flying Fish and Alligator Records. Phil Wiggins, as well as Matheis and Wiggins, have been featured in major music magazines, including on the cover of Living Blues and the Washington Post, the New York Times, the Chicago Tribune, and many, many more. Frank Matheis, that's Matheis. Our friend Frank is from Germany, and it's pronounced Matheis, which I just learned. A University of Maryland graduate, is music journalist and a regular contributor to Living Blues magazine and formerly to Blues Access. As former radio DJ with WKZE and WVKR, he produced award-winning radio documentaries. And now let's get started with the Sweet Bitter Blues program. Take it away, Frank and Phil. Can you tell us how, let's start with how you met. How did you two meet?
Can you tell us?
Well, let's see.
You want to talk?
Frank, can I don't know if I can hear you.
You can't hear me?
Yeah, you're kind of quiet. I wonder if you can get louder. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you good.
So yeah, well, I don't know, maybe you should tell the story, but I can say that John Matheis and I used to play, I don't know if everybody remembers, Kramer Books and Afterwards used to have live music, and they used to set people up on this awning up that kind of came off the balcony. I really don't know how safe it was up there, but we would put our chairs on the top of that awning that came off that balcony, and we would sit up there and play. And if I'm remembering correctly, it was a pass the hat joint. I think, once we got through playing, I don't know, they might have paid us, but I believe that once we got through playing, we would take the bucket and go around from table to table and collect money from people that were willing to help support our music. So Frank, you want to take it from there?
Yeah. Well, it was 1981, Kramer Bookstore on DuPont Circle, and I was a student at the University of Maryland. At the time, I was in graduate school there, and we were walking in looking for books like you normally would in a bookstore, just browsing around. And I walked in and I heard this music, and I swear we thought, my wife and I, my girlfriend at the time, we thought it was Sonny Terry and Brownie McGee, because I never heard of Phil or John Matheis, his partner at the time. And I thought it was a record. At first, I thought it was an album playing upstairs, because I couldn't imagine that they would have live music upstairs on this music store. But then there was an interruption, and I heard them talking, and I said, oh my God, Sonny Terry and Brownie McGee are upstairs. My heart was beating. I was walking up the stairs. I thought I was going to hyperventilate, because these were like my favorite musicians. So I came upstairs, and there's these two fellas, dressed really debonair, fancy fedora hats, really nice clothes. And there was nobody else up there, just those two guys, and then the two of us. So, we sat down and got a cup of coffee and sat there and just had a show all to ourselves. And afterwards, Phil and John, they were very friendly and open. And they told me that they had just recorded an album with a German blues label, which surprised me. And Phil invited me to his house to learn harmonica. I never did because I was way, way too scared to do that. I mean, here I heard this guy play, and it was intimidating when it comes to his virtuoso performance. I mean, he was incredible, and I was like, just a little amateur guy fiddling around with that harmonica. But that's how we met. And subsequently, over the years, I moved to New York, and anytime they came up to these parts, my wife and I would go and hear them play, take photos and follow their careers. And I played their records on the radio. So lo and behold, it was again a visit of Phil up to New York. He was performing with Corey Harris and Alvin Youngblood Hart at Jazz at Lincoln Center. I contacted him and I said, let's meet up. Let's get together. And it turns out he needed a ride to Pennsylvania. And, being a writer, I love the chance to spend some time with Phil. And so as we talked, we decided to write an article for Living Blues. And that's how we reconnected. And that was 2013. So you're taking a big leap, even though in between I would see them at concerts. But, that's how we reconnected. Right, Phil?
Yes, that's true. And Frank wrote the great article for Living Blues. It was my first time appearing on the cover of a magazine by myself, which was a great milestone for me. And then that article was such a success, and Frank and I hit it off so well that then we started talking about doing a book, and doing a book about the DC music scene, which I thought was a great idea, and was really happy. And the great thing about Frank is, I've met so many people in my life that have said, let's do this, let's do that, let's do a book, or and Frank turned out to be the person that actually would get it done. And the book, I was a little skeptical because it's a lot about me, and so I was a little skeptical that it would be worthwhile. But from the response that we've gotten and all, I've kind of come to realize that we actually came up with a really great book, a really good. The project turned out really well. I probably shouldn't say that I was kind of surprised. But Frank, like I say, is such a thorough person, and he's a man of his word. And when he says he's going to do something, he gets it done. And so, so here we are with this book, Sweet Bitter Blues.
Great. And so you reconnected in 2013. And at what point and how did you decide to collaborate on a book together?
I guess it was Frank's idea to do the book. I'm not sure, but I've kind of learned that there's a big kind of a gap, or a big like a missing link in the whole, in the field of documented blues, about the Piedmont style blues, and mainly really about the DC blues community, which has been and is to this day a really important part of the whole blues scene. You had an amazing community of tradition bearers, people that from the African American community and from the South that made their homes in DC and the DC area. So you had, John Jackson, John Cephas, Archie Edwards, Flora Moulton, Mother Scott. Actually Skip James lived in DC for quite a while. Mississippi John Hurt lived in DC for quite a while. So all these people were there, and all these people were, brilliant musicians, but also great teachers, very open-hearted, generous people that welcomed anybody into their home and would sit with them, spend time, tell their stories, teach them, about the music, and teach them actually how to play the music and all that. So you had that amazing scene going on that was, in a lot of ways, in terms of books and publications and all, was kind of neglected. You had some writers and musicologists in DC, living in DC and the surrounding area, that wrote about everybody but the people actually living in DC. The DC community. And when I say DC community, I'm including Virginia, Maryland, even Delaware, the surrounding area. So yeah. So, and I Frank, you can tell more, but I think that Frank was aware of that lacking, and really
as we
wanted
did the
to.
article,
Okay, go ahead, Frank.
as we were doing research, and as we were writing the article for Living Blues, it became clear that, with the exception of some individual interviews that were lengthy interviews done by Dr. Barry Lee Pearson of the University of Maryland about Archie and John Cephas and John Jackson individually, but there was never anything about the collective group and about the acoustic scene there. Okay, so as we realized that there wasn't anything, and also, there weren't lots of photographs. As we started to tell people that we were going to write this book, we started getting all these incredible photographs, and these are essentially a cultural treasure in their own right, because people had them in shoeboxes. People had them tucked away, and I asked one photographer, "How come you never published this?" And they said, "Well, nobody ever asked." But I should say, in working with Phil over these years, despite his amazing achievements and his incredible record of what he's accomplished in his life musically, as a teacher, as a music director, he is one of the most modest people I had ever met. In a business where even people who are only moderately good have an ego bigger than an elephant, Phil is the exact opposite. So in working with him over these years, it has been a beautiful project of friendship and harmony that I will never forget. It's not just the end result, which I think came out really good, but it's really getting to know Phil and having the honor of working with him on this. And I would say that the book is different than what almost anybody else does, because we really truly had a partnership, in the sense that some of these books that you would read, like about B.B. King or others, they basically had ghostwriters. Somebody else would come in and write the book. And the musician, and very often the African-American musician, had a very small part in the process. The way we did it is Phil, from the outset, and we agreed, Phil's going to tell his own story in his own words. For his portion of the book, when he's talking about his experiences, what he lived through, the people he played with, his part in the blues scene, we kept it literally right to the word. I didn't go in and write his stuff. Phil doesn't need someone to write his stuff for him. He can articulate it really well. I scribed it, and put the words together and pieced it together. But my portion of it was the essays, the supporting essays, the introduction, and talking about John Jackson and other people, but the core of it is the guy who lived it, the guy who played that music and who was part of that original blues scene that is now, that he's now a living legend, literally.
Right.
Wow.
You do note, Frank, in the book that you are the scribe and Phil is the storyteller. This book is Phil's story. And so, and that really comes across in the book. Phil, can you tell us, go to your furthest memory and tell us about how you learned to play the blues? You mentioned some of the greats were teaching others, and how did you get into it? How did you learn to play harmonica? How did you learn to play the blues?
Well, that's okay. So I picked up the harmonica, I guess, well, of course, being a kid growing up, I had, toy harmonicas and this and that. But I started really trying to make music on a real harmonica. I was maybe like 14 or, well, more like 15 or 16 when I started really trying to make music on the harmonica. And as I was learning and experimenting and exploring the harmonica, I got to be good friends with a woman named Flora Moulton, who was kind of elderly woman. She was a blind woman and a street musician. She was a sanctified minister, and she had her home in Washington, D.C. She was originally from Louisa County, Virginia, but she made her home in Washington, D.C. She had come to D.C. as a young person because they had great programs in Washington for blind people, teaching them skills that they could use to get a job. And she came for that, and she made her home there. But then she started what she considered to be her ministry and also her vocation, making music, playing on the street corner in Washington, D.C. in front of, I believe, Woodward and Lothrop department store. And so that's what she did. And I had sort of known her growing up, just kind of from seeing her on the corner, walking by and maybe stopping and listening to her. And I used to come to DC a lot with my older sister. My parents used to send me sort of as a chaperone for my older sister to kind of try to keep her out of trouble. And she loved Flora. And every time we went to DC, she would make a point of stopping by at Flora's, where Flora was sitting and playing. And if it was summer, she'd bring her a cool drink. And if it was winter, she'd bring her, tea or coffee. And we'd always spend some time talking to her. And then I got reacquainted with her as a musician by a friend of mine, Ed Morris, who's also mentioned in the book. Ed was a great guitar player and kind of an eccentric person. And he worked at what was it called? I can't remember the name, but he worked at a record store in DC, and he kind of he had made it a goal of his to get Flora recorded and get her the recognition that he felt like she deserved. And a friend of mine from high school introduced me to Ed, and then Ed took me to Flora's house. And then so Flora and I got reintroduced for me as a musician. And to me, I think that was one of the best things that could have happened, because her style of playing, she played an open tuning guitar. She called it Vastapul, or sometimes she called it Spanish style. And it was open tuning in the key of open G. And so she was used to, playing on the street, and people would come by and say hello, and she'd stop in the middle of reverse to say hello, or stop in the middle of reverse to say thank you to someone that had put money in her cup. So her style, it was an open tuning, and she didn't really make chord changes. She more like just kind of implied the chord changes. And so I had to listen really carefully in order to stick with her. And I had to pay close attention to her voice, because really that was the main thing that gave me a clue as to where she was headed next. And because of that, I learned the importance of, using your ear as a musician, especially when you're trying to play well with other people. And which sounds like a given, but you'd be surprised how many musicians don't really use their ear as much as they should. And I don't know, I probably shouldn't say this, but especially harmonica players.
Well, let me say that, because first of all, Flora, she had when I first met her in 1975, she had a butter knife, one of those steel butter knives, and she taped duct tape around the knife portion, and she used the smooth part that you would hold on your hand to do sliding. When I saw her, she played open D, right? So when Phil is saying that he had to play along with that, like, it would be extremely difficult. And one thing, I've been listening to blues since I was 11 years old. I love the blues, and I've heard just about everybody. When it comes to harmonica, there is no one on the planet like Phil. And I'll tell you what, lots of people have lots of riffs. Lots of people, can play technically good, can play fast and what have you. But you know what? You listen to their records, even the best of them, even the superstars of harmonica. And you listen, and if you've ever heard blues before, you can anticipate the notes that are going to happen 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 notes up the road. You know what's coming before it even comes, because they repeat the same things. Phil, he will play and you have no idea what's coming. And it is so innovative, so creative. And he does that on the spot with a kind of fantastic virtuosity that really no one else can match. Phil, show him how. You got a heart with you?
I do.
Let's prove what I just said.
Uh-oh, that's a lot of pressure, man. I don't know.
You want me to teach you a few chords before you go, or what?
Hold on. So you want me to play a tune right now, or?
Yeah. Once you give them one, the people have heard us talk, but you're a harmonica player, let's prove it.
Yes, we would love to hear you play some tunes. I know people came to hear your music as well as your stories.
All right. Well, I know this is not like a performance or not like a set, but when I'm doing sets now, especially when I'm playing with like my quartet, I guess you could say, the house party, which is guitar, harmonica, violin, and a dancer. When I'm starting those, I like to kind of kick out the cobwebs by playing a little bit of this tune that I made called Prayers and Praises, which really kind of helps keep the memory of my real strong connection with my grandmother, and really one of the places where I really fell in love with this music that I've devoted my life to now is like sitting outside Green Liberty Baptist Church in Tizville, Alabama, on a Thursday night, listening to my grandmother inside the church with the kind of elderly women of the church having the prayer meeting. And even though and the prayer meeting consisted of the elderly women of the church singing prayers and praises, and one woman would sing out a line, and then the rest of the congregation would answer back. And so I made this tune to kind of keep that memory sharp in my eye and my mind, because it's very important to me. My connection with my grandmother is very important, and Tizville, Alabama, I mean, really is kind of my definition of home. It's where my mother's family and my father's family came from, and I spent a lot of summers there growing up. So prayers and praises. And today I discovered that Charles Mingus, the great jazz bass player, also has a song. His song is called Wednesday Prayer Meeting. And I was surprised to discover that And then, you know, after hearing about it, I went and looked it up, and listening to it, it's very similar to my song Prayers and Praises, and which makes me really curious as to what his connection, if he has a similar story. But anyway, now that I've yacked for 20 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and play a little bit of that. Prayers and Praises. Can you hear me okay? Is that loud enough? Frank, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I think it sounds good.
Wow, Wow, that's just absolutely phenomenal, Phil.
Oh,
Absolutely. Oh my
you.
goodness. You really wowed the crowd. I was watching folks in the audience.
Wow.
It's no wonder you've been honored with all the recognition you had from the NEA and such.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, if you've ever spent any time at all in a Black Baptist church, yeah, you probably recognize some of that prayer meeting. And then I snuck a little bit of Sunday morning sermon in there also. And so, yeah, thank you.
Great. Wow. Yeah,
Did
it
you
seemed to tell a story. Yeah, as you were playing too. It was telling a story. Yeah.
Thank you for saying so. I mean, that's one of my favorite things about that song is that even though there are no words to it, it does tell a story. And I really appreciate you saying that.
Can you tell us a little about that story? And then I think Ida has something after.
Well, as I said, my grandmother, growing up, well, first of all, I mean, I was kind of a strange kid in high school. I had more friends, you know, I was like 15, 16, 17. I had more friends that were 40 years old and older than I had that were my own age. You know, and my grandmother, you know, we had a closer relationship between the two of us than I had with just about anyone else. So I was very, you know, I was very close with my grandmother, and we spent a lot of time together. Like I said, when I was growing up, I spent a lot of time summers down in Titusville where she lived. And then I remember when my stepfather went off to Vietnam, my grandmother came and stayed with us in Virginia for a long time, and she and I worked together because we wanted to plant a flower garden to have that greet my stepfather when he came back from Vietnam, that he would come home to this beautiful flower garden. So we worked together on that, and we got to be really close. And you know, as I say, when she was in Titusville and she liked to go to prayer meeting on Thursday evening, and she didn't like to go by herself because by the time she was walking back home, the church was about 3 blocks from her house, and by the time she was walking back home, it was after dark, and she didn't like walking home in the dark. So she liked me to go with her so I could walk her home, you know, walk with her home. And that's how I got exposed to that beautiful, powerful music. And you know, whatever you think about religion, I think it's really kind of true that when people are worshiping, or people are you know, praising God, you know, whatever that means to any particular person, it kind of drives the music to higher heights. I mean, that music, that singing that I would hear coming out of that church was so powerful. And yet I would say that the sound of it, you know, was what to me was blues, even though the lyrics and, you know, what they were expressing was sacred, you know, and you know, praising God and that, but the music itself just felt like, to me, like pure D blues.
You know, one of the things that, you know, this song had no words, and people said it tells a story. But I would like to point out that Phil also writes words, that in addition to being a virtuoso harmonica performer, who really, when he wants to, can outplay anybody. He can play faster or more riffs than anyone, but you know, he focuses on passion, on emotion and feeling. And you know, but maybe he will give us a chance to hear some of the songs that he's written lately that really address some important and poignant issues, and songs that I think, you know, add another dimension when you hear him as a lyricist. And you know, that's, I think, where people are really awed when they realize that. Phil, do you want to play one of the songs that you've written lately, especially the one that we talked about?
Sure. I mean, if that's okay with everybody else.
Yeah, I think Ida was just going to say something regarding the last
Okay.
song, and then
Okay, yeah,
we'd love to
Ida.
hear another tune.
All right.
Maybe I'll save my questions until, because I have it written down until the end where you have the question and answer.
Okay.
But
all
I
right.
do want to come back to that song.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
I'll
mean, the
do
thing
that.
is, it
I'll
would
hold
give
it.
it. Okay, it would give me a chance to catch my breath, though, if you want to.
Okay.
If you want to talk,
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, I love raw blues.
Mm-hmm.
I do. I grew up listening to Chicago style blues,
Right.
and I got all of that from my daddy. And I have, and of course, I'm at WPFW radio, but
Right.
my dad gave me a lot. I have over 200 albums still that my father gave me, and a lot of them, half of them are blues albums.
Uh-huh.
And
Nice.
what I find that, would you consider your music to be Delta style blues?
No,
Or what
no.
style would you consider?
Okay, well, so I've been associated with what is known as
Piedmont.
Piedmont style blues. Yeah.
Yes.
Now, I'm a little bit. I'm probably not the best person to talk to about those different categories, because I think that, like my partner John Cephas, he is known as a Piedmont guitar player, but he loved all sorts of music. He loved like torch songs and pop songs and all that, and all those tunes that he loved and that he listened to growing up, and that his mom and dad collected records and all that, and same with myself. But he played all sorts of styles of music, and he used, I guess you would say, that Piedmont style technique on the guitar. But he would play everything from When I Grow Too Old to Dream, Just a Little Shanty in Old Shanty Town, as well as straight up Black Rat Swing, and straight
Right.
up acoustic blues. So like I said, when I got started, a lot of my technique and style developed from trying to keep up with Flora Moulton, trying to keep track of and so I learned how to accompany her and support what she was doing and not overpower. Of course, with Flora Moulton, you couldn't overpower her voice, because when she was sitting on that corner in Washington singing and playing guitar, you could hear her like 5 blocks away over the traffic, all the city noise. Her voice was like a razor, just cut through all that. So it wasn't that much of a danger of overpowering her, but the idea of being able to play well together and supporting what she was doing. And the same thing with John. I hadn't, I called that music before I heard the term Piedmont. No, I called that music, finger style and finger picking style. And that's really what defines what is known as the Piedmont style, is the technique on the guitar of not banging out a bass line with your thumb, and if you're doing it right, it's a real powerful thumb, and it's really the thing that people dance, and that's what moves them. That makes you want to shake your butt and get up and move, is the thumb. And then picking out a melody line on the treble strings with your fingers at the same time. That's what basically defines the Piedmont style. And learning how to play with John and accompany John, I learned that sometimes my job is to be, percussion. Sometimes my job is to be, call and response, where he would sing out a phrase, and just like in the prayer meetings, he would sing out a phrase, and then I would answer that phrase back on the harmonica, or I would duplicate that phrase on the harmonica, and then when I would do a solo, I would start out by as close as I could to playing the melody, and then take that melody and just stretch it out and take it out, slow it down to halftime or kick it up to double time. play with the rhythm, play with the dynamics of it, stretch the melody, change the melody, those kind of things when I was improvising. So, yeah, I think I hope I answered Ida's question, and I don't see her anymore. So.
You did. I'm
Okay,
right here.
Okay.
You did.
Great.
I will hold the rest of them until the other end.
Okay. Fine.
Phil just touched on it, and I think it's important to mention that one of his current activities on numerous of his ensembles is to again reunite dance with Piedmont blues, acoustic blues played in the old Piedmont style. Yeah. And, he does that with the Chesapeake Sheiks. He does that with the House Party. And that's a revival of something that has been lost. And he's the only one doing that. And we talked extensively about that in the book and his portion, yes. Where he, one of the guys who's here today, Junior's Brickhouse, is one of the dancers. And maybe Junius can chime in later on and talk about that, because that's a really important cultural, really, it's cataclysmic in the sense of what's taking place. No one is doing this. And when you see them combined again, it's just absolutely powerful and beautiful.
Yeah, it's this is synchronicity. I mean, it's what it was made for. I came to the realization a long time ago that probably every note of music I've ever played in my life has been dance music, and very rarely has it ever been presented as such. I mean, the only time that I've played for dancers up until here recently has been at these house parties that I would go to with John or with Archie Edwards, like going around DC with Archie Edwards, or going around, the country with John down Bowling Green, Virginia, Richmond, Fredericksburg, and going to people's houses and people getting up and dancing to the music. And there's nothing like the feeling of that. I mean, it just feels so right and so amazing to me to be just playing and people dancing to us playing. I mean, so much of music, popular music now, it's like virtuosic and it's all about how like fast you can play and that. And I can realize, people can't really dance to real fast music. They want a groove where they can, just kind of be in the cut, be in the groove and play. And that's the thing to me. Let's see, what song was it? Just the other day. Oh, it one of the jug band songs called Boodle Lamb Shake. And I've been playing it. And the other day I heard a recording of me playing it when I first learned it. And I had a great guitar player backing me up. And the rhythm was just right for dancing. And I realized that since then, like recently, I've been playing that song too fast. And people, now, as fast as I was playing it, wouldn't be able to dance to that song. But you gotta, I mean, being a good musician is all about figuring out what your job is at any given point. And if you think that your job is to show off, to bowl the audience over, then you're not doing it right. I mean, to me, in order to play well in an ensemble is constantly about, okay, what can I contribute to this total sound right now at this moment to make us all sound great? And sometimes the answer to that is nothing. And sometimes the answer to that is just hitting the backbeat. So the guitar player who may be, kind of losing the beat, he'll hear you hitting the backbeat and it'll keep him on track. Sometimes it's just leaving that space where someone has played a really powerful phrase, and if you jump right behind them, it's going to weaken that phrase. So just to stay out and let that phrase stand on its own. Or if someone sings a beautiful, phrase, vocal, just repeat that phrase. Maybe somebody missed it and repeat it. That's what making music. I mean, to me, that's what it's all about. It's figuring out the best thing that you can do at any given moment to make everybody sound great.
Great. And so what What's the next tune you've got coming up for us?
Well, let's see. You know, as Frank mentioned, the whole over 30 years that I've been playing with John, I've also been making songs, and very few of those songs, maybe half a dozen or maybe as many as a dozen of those songs wound up in the Cephas and Wiggins set list, but most of them did not. And you know, so I've been writing songs that long, and I'm still making songs today. And of course, lately with everything that's been going on in the world and in our country and all, a lot of what's been on my mind and as a result, a lot of what's been coming out in my music and in my original music and in the old traditional songs that I choose to play, a lot of it now has to do with, you know, policing. All right, so there it is, and I've come to the realization that the way that African Americans are policed in this country today has its roots in, you know, chattel slavery, and then the Jim Crow laws and the black codes that came into practice after the quote unquote emancipation and all that, and kind of the fear and the anger and the hatred that comes out now, I believe has its roots in that, and especially when you compare how African Americans are policed and compare that to how other people are policed, that are treated more like family and that are really more protected and served, whereas you know, African Americans, you know, shot and killed. I might as well just say it because that's what's been going on. So so anyway, so I know I'm taking up a lot of time yakking, but here's a song I wrote that I made quite a while ago. It's called Ebo Landing. And this song, there's what, 3 or 4 verses, okay? The first verse, you know, the title of the song, Ebo Landing, and it gets its name from a place in South Carolina, off the coast of South Carolina, the St. Solomon's Island, I guess it is. And they're, you know, St. Solomon's Island is, you know, on the Atlantic Ocean, you know, off the coast of South Carolina. And, you know, back during the slave trade, back when they were selling Africans to people so to get their labor for free, they were bringing a shipload of Africans that wound up off the coast of St. Solomon's Island, and they loaded them into smaller boats and were rowing them up this body of water called Dunbar Creek. They were rowing them up that creek to the slave market. And this one boatload of Africans, as they were coming up Dunbar Creek and they came in sight of the slave market, they decided that rather than face that fate, rather than being sold as livestock, that they would jump overboard and take their chances. And because they were all chained together, when they jumped overboard, they all drowned. And people renamed the place where that happened. They renamed that spot. They renamed it Ebo Landing. And so that's what inspired the song. The second verse of the song kind of talks about the system of continuing to get Africans labor for free after the emancipation, when they enacted the black codes and the Jim Crow laws, that it made it easy to arrest Africans and put them in jail, and then some, you know, plantation owner or the owner of a rock quarry or whatever that needed labor would come and quote unquote pay their fine and take them and put them to work. And my understanding of that system was, more often than not, those people just got worked to death. because the investment was so little that the plantation owners were not that concerned with the well-being of those people, because it was easy to work one person to death and just replace them. So that's what the second verse deals with. And the third verse is me listening to my uncles who were born and raised in Titusville, Alabama, kind of talking and laughing really about what life was like when they were children in Titusville, Alabama, and what a dangerous place that was for a child of African descent to be a child and to make the mistakes that children make and get into the shenanigans that children get into, and to be a child. I mean, it was dangerous to do that in Titusville, Alabama, which you will hear from the song. Unfortunately, there's not much harmonica in the song. Well, okay, just a minute. I'm getting myself together. One, two. Well, there wasn't no beacon of hope and freedom, no promise of the American dream. Well, there wasn't even any Ellis Island. What greeted those people made them moan and weep. What greeted those people made them moan and weep. As they rowed that boat into Ebo landing, saw so many Africans chained and bound. Well, that sight inspired some of my forefathers to jump into the Dunbar Creek and drown. Well, to jump into the Dunbar Creek and drown. Well, now you say you want your country back, to make the greatest nation great again. Well, I've heard that there have been some good old days, but I don't know where, nor remember when. Well, I don't know where, or remember when. Well, there wasn't no sheriff like the one in Mayberry, shut down the jail on Thanksgiving Day. If they caught you on the road without money and papers, well, I'm here to tell you, partner, there was hell to pay. Well, I'm here to tell you, partner, there was hell to pay. They would arrest you and they'd fine you and they'd throw you in jail. And when you couldn't pay that money fee, well, they would ship you down to Lee County, Alabama, and make you go to work in the lime quarry. Well, they would make you go to work in the lime quarry. Well, now you say you want your country back, to make the greatest nation great again. Well, I've heard that there have been some good old days, but I don't know where, nor remember when. Well, I don't Well, my uncles got themselves a brand new bicycle from working at Mr. Fortune's store. Well, it was meant to be used to deliver groceries all around Titusville from door to door. Well, you know, they took that bicycle out on a spree. They were having some fun, as children will, but then the sheriff caught him and he pistol whipped him, and he left them lying bloody on Dynamite Hill. Well, he left them lying bloody on Dynamite Hill. Well, now you say you want your country back to make the greatest nation great again. Well, I've heard that there have been some good old days, but I don't know where nor remember when. Well, I've heard that there have been some good old days, but I don't know where nor remember when. Well, I don't know where nor remember when.
Bravo, bravo. Really, really powerful, Phil. And an
Thank you.
important story to tell. Such an important story to tell.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. I think, as Frank mentioned, that when we talked about doing the book, we agreed that my story, that I would tell it in my own words. And I think that's really important, and that is something that has been missing when you talk about blues, and when you talk about the people that are considered, authorities. And when you look at the books that have been written, most of them have been written by people that are not of the culture that they're speaking about. And they have, I think a lot of the writers that I'm aware of have some misunderstandings about my culture, and as a result, misunderstandings about this music. And I think it's important, that people, whoever you are and whatever you are and whatever you do, that you speak for yourself, that you tell your own story. And I think that, a lot of people that have written books about the blues have different, different motivations, and a lot of them self-serving motivations about writing.
The wall, the entrance wall,
Okay.
the feed lines.
I hear someone speaking.
We haven't had any trouble with them.
Oh, I'm trying to mute.
Comes into the building, goes to a power chamber.
Everyone else is muted. I can't.
Brody.
It's Saul Brody. Oh, he muted. Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, please stay muted until our Q&A at the end. Phil, please continue what you were sharing.
That's my point, and that's why I appreciate Frank, and that I do tell my own story. I speak from my own experiences, and Frank understood how important that is to me, and really, like I say, so many people that are considered authorities, have different motivations and misunderstandings, from observations, that they make as sort of as outsiders, and they observe my culture or anyone's culture, and they make assumptions, and they make that aren't necessarily correct, and a lot of people, they don't approach it with respect. It's surprising how many writers have written about the blues and interview people, and as soon as you begin to read you understand that the person that they are asking questions and the person that they're listening to, that they're writing about, they have very little respect for that person. They, you know, it's surprising how many people don't understand that, how important it is to allow everyone their dignity, and to, up until the point where you're given a damn good reason not to respect someone, to have the utmost respect for them. You know, I think that's important, and I think that's one reason why it's important, you know, for us and for anyone, you know, to tell their own story.
Right. And in relation to this, you talked about your grandmother, and you both cite you both dedicate the book to your grandmothers, both of your
Yes.
grandmothers, your grandmother from Alabama, Frank's grandmother from Southern Germany. And I also grew up with my grandmother. I was so close to my own grandmother. So that really resonated with me. Your story about your grandmother. I was an only child, and I was around all the older folks. So it seems to me you may have gleaned a lot of insight being connected to these older generations who had experiences that, you know, we only learn about from history books, but you heard the stories firsthand and could even see the, you know, subtleties, the light in their eyes as they told stories or reacted to situations. So I think I would venture to say that probably helped to shape you as a musician.
Definitely. And it comes out in my music, you know. You know, right from the beginning, it just seemed like a natural thing for me to make songs. So, those two things actually, to make my own songs, and also to find my own style, which, as I was saying, I found from you know, being influenced by, you know, Piedmont style guitar and by piano, and also, I mean, all the different types of music that I love. You know, swing standards, New Orleans jazz. You know, I stole more from listening to Bunk Johnson or Louis Armstrong than I did from listening to other harmonica players. So all that's important to me. And, you know, I've always kept my ear open. A lot of my songs, you know, I steal lyrics from conversations. I mean, I sort of, I believe that when people are expressing themselves, and especially when you're expressing yourself and the stakes are extremely high, like the stakes of you being understood, you know, exactly the way you mean it, when it's almost life and death, that you are understood that well, that's when poetry happens. And that's what I listen for, you know, for finding, you know, ingredients for the songs that I make. So, and of course, my aunts and uncles and my mother, I mean, they were all great storytellers, and they all talked a lot about those times that they lived through that I didn't really experience, but hearing them tell those stories, and a lot of those stories, like the line that I sang in that song, the sheriff caught him and pistol whipped him. That really happened to two of my uncles. They were joyriding on that bicycle, and they got into the wrong neighborhood, and the sheriff picked them up and threw them in the car and drove them into the woods and pistol whipped them and just left them there. And somehow or another they found their way home, and they were pretty bad hurt from that. But, you know, I mean, the thing about it, you know, telling those stories, I mean, even though they were kind of, a lot of them, they were terrible, they were always told with kind of a sense of humor, and kind of in a way of not like, look at this terrible thing that happened to us, but more like, you know, look what we overcame, you know, and you know, we had a lot of joy in our lives, and in spite of all this, you know, this dangerous environment that they lived in, and the terrible things that happened to them, they had they had a good life. They had a lot of joy in their lives, and they always tell these stories with a sense of humor and with a sense of moving forward. And yeah, they and they all were became very successful adults. The two that got left bloodied in the woods, one of them became an attorney, and the other one became a psychologist. My aunt Precious, became a very successful fashion designer. They all thrived in spite of the hard times, and maybe the hard times were what inspired them to work hard to overcome.
One of the things that I have considered some of the greatest compliments paid to our book, only Phil could tell the story from the way he lived it and what he experienced and what he came up with, who he played with and what he learned from it and what they went through. Personal stories.
Yes.
People have, blues fans have read the book and they know those musicians or they know some of the musicians, but there has been readers who really don't know anything about blues. Some of the people that I've spoken to, they read the book, and what they said to me was that they were enlightened by Phil's portion of the book when he tells the story from the perspective of an African-American musician telling what he went through in life. And, they don't know any of the musicians we mentioned. They looked at the pictures. Later, they might have gone back to listen just out of curiosity to see what it sounded like. People who never heard Phil, never heard John Cephas, but they read the story that Phil told. Phil told, for example, things that actually startled me, that amazed me. He was telling me when he was in high school and he lived in Northern Virginia in a predominantly white neighborhood, and some young guys, white guys, came through in a car and it looked like they were lost. And Phil went up and, trying to be nice as he is, went up to him and, said, "Hey, can I help you?" And they spat in his face. Things like that. Or he was telling about people driving down to Alabama and packing enough food because they couldn't stop anywhere along the way as Black folks. So these are things that are very personal. They're very deep. They're very emotive, and they're a true story. So, that's one of the things about this book is, on one hand, we wanted to pay homage to a musical scene that deserved attention and is part of an important element. And lots of people have acknowledged that portion. But then again, the story itself that he tells, and then the essays that we surrounded his story with fills in the whole. So, Phil will talk about certain people, and then we put longer essays in the back that I wrote up and some other people wrote up, so that, it really gives the comprehensive look of that whole community. And that's really what it was, is a community of musicians. And it still is. It still is that. Right, Phil?
Yeah, true. I mean, a lot of, like Archie's gone, John Cephas is gone, John Jackson is gone, but the seeds that they planted are still, bearing fruit today in this area. And I think that one of the most important things that they passed on to the younger generation, to the young folks that got involved in the Archie Edwards Blues Foundation and the whole scene in Washington. One of the most important things that they passed on was a sense of humility and just accepting, people and for, as they came, giving people as they came respect and treating them with generosity and hospitality. I mean, John Jackson, you could be, a 15-year-old kid with a gigantic afro and holes in his jeans and probably hadn't washed in a week. And he would invite you to his house and sit you down on this couch and tell you his life story and teach you songs. And, that kind of set the attitude that is still prevalent. Like if you walk into the barbershop on a Saturday afternoon, regardless of who you are and what your level of playing is, you're welcome. And I think that those folks, Archie and John and Chief and all of them, that to me is one of the most important things that they passed on to the younger generation.
Do we still have time for some questions and answers?
Yes, we do. We should go to Q&A. I just want to add from what I gathered in the book too, just to add to what you were saying. I did, gather that from the book that the blues scene in DC served as a sort of haven and a place, that it was ahead of its time, where everyone was treated with respect and dignity and welcoming, and the different groups of people mixed, and which you didn't see it maybe in the general population at that time either.
Yeah, true.
So the blues were ahead of its time, and a healing kind of place too.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Well, this is great. Let's call on, I know Saul Brody was hoping to ask a question earlier. Saul, are you still on?
Yes, I'm here, but I didn't, did
Okay.
I put on my hand by accident? I put up my hand by accident? I don't have a question. Thank you.
Oh, maybe it was by accident. It was on earlier. Okay, well,
Thank you.
Well, Saul, anyway, it's good to hear you, man, and I enjoyed doing that session with you a while back. I still think about that. That was great fun.
Yeah, for the FSGW a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah.
yes.
I had a question for you. Now I can't think of what it after that, it was something that popped in my mind that I meant to ask you. Now I can't think of what it is, but maybe in the course of this Q&A, it'll come back to me and I'll ask you. But anyway, great seeing you, man.
But you're supposed to answer the questions. You're not supposed to.
Yeah, well, that's me for you. I never follow instructions. All right. So so we're ready for questions. So great seeing you, Saul.
Okay, great.
I had a question.
Yes.
I did.
Yeah, I wanted to find out, number one, I'd love to have some of your recordings to play them on my radio show.
Oh. Okay.
Number two, the song that you did about your grandmother, is that recorded?
Evil Land, and I'm sorry, prayers and praises. I don't think that's recorded yet.
No.
I don't.
That's your original. No. That's your original song, right? Yeah.
Yes.
You don't think it's recorded yet?
I don't believe. I'm pretty certain. There may be a video of it that someone did of a live performance of it on the web. I'll check into that and let you know. And also, I'll make sure that you get some of my recordings.
We'd love to come on.
And
Ida.
I was getting ready to say that.
He can play it live on your radio show.
Oh,
yes.
I would love that. My audience would love that. Absolutely.
It would be our pleasure. Yeah, we would love to do that.
Right. Maybe in July? July, August?
Yeah, July or August. Well, yeah, we can work it out. Yeah.
My July's booked, so Phil, you'd have to go in on your own.
Oh, your July's booked. Well, I mean, we'll talk and we'll figure out what's best.
Yeah.
Oh, August, I mean, I got all the rest of the year.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
That's
yeah,
great.
we'll get our heads together and we'll make it happen.
Okay. And the other thing I wanted to ask you, Phil, have you ever had the opportunity to play with James Cotton?
No, not to play with him. I
Okay.
did get to meet him and sit down and chat with him, but I never did get to play with him. I've always loved his music, and the funny thing is, like looking at his album covers and stuff, I assumed that he was just a real hard, like tough, hard, kind of maybe a little bit even on the angry side, man. And when I got to
He
meet him,
wasn't.
he was
Oh,
such a
good.
sweetheart. He was such a sweetheart.
He was.
Yeah,
I get-
and I was really surprised, but yeah, he was very, yeah, an absolute sweetheart, and really enjoyed.
And one
spending
last
time with him.
question.
Uh-huh.
Go ahead, Frank. I'm sorry.
He played with Johnny Shines.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I did get to play with Johnny Shots, and I got to be very good friends.
And
was
so
during
in
the
addition to
recording
him,
that.
in
Yeah.
addition to him, did you get to play with any of the other notable harmonica players or older blues players that have gone on, or the ones that are
well-
still around?
Yeah, well, actually, most of them have gone on, but I did have the good fortune of, because Dr. Bernice Regan is the one that. So I would go to the Smithsonian Folklife Festival because Flora liked having me with her to help her get around. She couldn't see, and she liked having me play with her and all. And she invited me to come there, and I would just come there and sit in her booth and play with her. And I didn't have anybody's permission or anything to do that. And Dr. Bernice Regan, she was running the African diaspora section of the Smithsonian Festival at that time. And after she saw me playing with Flora, and I just kept coming back and wouldn't go away, she went ahead and hired me to be there and to accompany her. And in the course, I played with Flora at that festival probably 4 years straight, leading up to 1976. And during that time, I got to meet Johnny Shines, who, like I said, we got to be very good friends. Sam Chapman of the Mississippi Sheiks, Robert Jr. Lockwood. I mean, just all these folks that were icons, mostly of the Mississippi Delta blues, but all the, Hound Dog Taylor. I was me and a friend of mine decided to be winos for a day. So we bought bottles of Boone's Farm apple wine and put it in brown bags and went to the festival and just got drunk, wandering around. And who did I wander into? And I was playing the harmonica and I wandered right into Hound Dog Taylor. And he got out his guitar and we had a great jam session right there. And I had no idea who he was. And all these guys. I mean, I actually got to play and record with some of the ones I mentioned. Sunnyland Slim, Sam Chapman, Robert Lockwood, Henry Townsend, all those I actually got to record with. They made live recordings of the Smithsonian Festival, of the jam sessions that we got into, and those are actually released now on what is the label that the Smithsonian owns?
Smithsonian Folkways.
Folkways, yeah. And those recordings are on Folkways now. So yeah, but at the time, I recognized that those were brilliant musicians and just amazing people and just like really generous. But I had no idea that I was sitting in amongst like the icons of blues, that I had no idea at that time how important those people were. I just felt like family really to them.
Yeah.
Or they felt like
Great.
family to me.
I know, I think Lisa, you probably know Lisa Knoll with the Washington Folklore Society and the Washington Folk Festival.
Yes.
Lisa, did you have, I saw you were one of the people that really lit up when he was talking about Flora and you knew so many of the
I've
other
been
artists.
listening. I've been listening just as a listener to those folks for years. I just wanted to say I heard the wonderful gig that Phil and Saul Brody just did for the Folklore Society of Greater
Oh, yeah.
Washington. And I'm primarily a singer, an unaccompanied singer. People think of me as a ballad singer. And I heard Phil singing a cappella, singing the beautiful songs that he'd written. And I immediately asked him if he'd come to, we have something called a Singers Weekend, which will be October 8th through 11th. We're having so much fun virtually. We're having singers from all over the English speaking world. And I brought Phil on without the wonderful blues people that he usually plays with, because we're just doing it online, and just singing and sharing songs. He's going to be doing a history of the blues workshop, a sort of a history of the blues sing around or presentation there. But he's also going to be heading up one of our songs of social justice things, because a lot of his songs have a lot of social resonance to them. He's got an incredible song about the that was inspired by the death of James Floyd, and anybody who heard it that night, we were just riveted. So I feel he has, in addition to being a great harmonica player, he's got great talents as a songwriter and a singer, and I want people to stay alert.
Well, thank you for saying that. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And who else? Charlie, did you have a comment to add or question?
Not necessarily. I was just one of the people who sort of organized that gig with Saul and with Phil, and I will second what Lisa said about Phil's songwriting talents. We don't think of him as a songwriter. We think of him as a harmonica player, a blues man, but he's actually a great songwriter.
Well, thank you so much. It really feels good to me to get some recognition for that, because like I said, I've been doing that for, ever since I picked up the harmonica. It just seemed like the natural thing to do is to make my own songs. But I the whole 30 plus years that I performed with John, most of them I didn't get a chance to perform. I mean, to sing, or when you got John in the band, you don't really need another singer. So
Ken has a question.
Okay.
Mr. Wiggins, I don't know if I've ever met you, but I will say hello to a few of the people in this thing I have met, Lisa and Charlie. And anyway, I'm a music journalist. I've been writing about music for 40 years. The first blues type thing I ever heard was the Paul Butterfield Blues Band. So I'm wondering if you ever worked in any situations like that with, an electric band. And Frank, my comment for you is, I'm a Jewish guy who grew up in Maryland and Massachusetts, and I've adopted a culture I didn't grow up with, English folk and folk rock. And it looks like you are another one of the people who has also adopted a culture you did not grow up with. And I'm really fascinated by that.
Well,
Okay.
I'm not
okay.
and culture, but I would say that, I appreciate and respect the culture, but adopting, that's a stretch, I think.
Yeah, I guess it would be the same for me, because I don't sing or play instruments. For some reason, I just have an affinity with this English stuff. I don't know where that came from. It's just there.
Yeah. Phil, I'm sorry I interrupted you.
Oh, it's okay. No. Just to answer the question about, playing, electric style, I did give that a try. I actually, when I was in high school, the first band I had was an electric band, but we were pretty terrible. And and at the same time that I was playing with that electric band, that was, and actually that's how I met John Jackson. Was that my first band that I had, that electric band that I had in high school, we got hired to play at this thing called Tavern Square in Alexandria, Virginia. There was a guy, older guy named Philip Roberts, who had a little art studio in Old Town Alexandria, and he restored paintings. And he was given the job of curating this concert series at Tavern Square. And I don't know how he heard about my band, but anyway, he seemed to really like us, and he hired us. And he also hired John Jackson to come and play before us. I'm avoiding the phrase open for us, because that would have been ridiculous. But and I remember, I never will forget, John and Cora Jackson showed up at Tavern Square, and they had this whole kind of ecosystem that came with them. I got to be remembering this wrong, but it felt like we were sitting under an eave at Tavern Square, sitting in like living room furniture. And they had, Cora had her bag with her, and she pulled out a bottle of some brown liquor that they were drinking. And she pulled out a couple of these aluminum collapsible cups, and she pulled out a collapsible ashtray. And they both smoked what I think it was Philip Morris that came with the coupons on the back. They both smoked those, and before you know it, it was as if we were in their home, But and yet we were sitting right there at Tavern Square. And when I heard John Jackson play, I was blown away. And talk about like the generosity and all. He, even after he heard my band and how bad we were, he invited me to come with him to Glen Echo the next weekend for the festival, which is the same organization that sponsored the gig that I just did with Saul Brody. But John Jackson, he invited me to come and accompany him at that festival, and I thought to myself, this guy, he's just being nice. He doesn't really mean this. Like, there's no way that he really means for me to come there and play with him. And so I didn't go. And the next time that I saw him, he actually expressed some disappointment and some anger that I didn't show up. And I thought, oh, and then I realized, yeah, he really meant it. The invitation was sincere.
Every time Phil tells that story, he always says how bad he was. But the fact is, John Jackson was a very sophisticated musician. I am sure Phil was not nearly as bad as he says he was, because John Jackson wouldn't invite him if he wasn't good, for sure.
Wow. I'm just going to take your word for it.
Yeah.
I have a question, Phil. How have festivals played a role in your musical development?
Oh, man. Well, like I say, I mean, for one thing, I mean, the Smithsonian Festival, and Dr. Regan, welcoming me and at that festival and hiring me to play at that festival. I mean, that festival is a huge life changer for me. I mean, for one, being able to spend the whole summer working there with Flora, accompanying her at that festival, but also, I mean, a chance to meet all those people that I mentioned. Like I met John Cephas and Chief Ellis there, and I met Henry Townsend, I met Sam Chapman, I met just so many people. Johnny Shines, I got to be really good friends with there. Robert Balfour. I mean, all those people. I mean, that festival is part of the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing today. But I mean, all those festivals. The best thing about all those festivals is that you have so many amazing musicians, just stuck in one small area, and we all get to know each other, and we all get to play together, and that for me has been a huge influence. To be able to sit down and jam with the likes of Hound Dog Taylor or Sam Chapman or any of those folks. I mean, that and when I think about how I spent my teen years in Northern Virginia and DC area, I feel like I spent all that time in pursuit of things that fit my definition of home. And my definition of home, which was kind of defined by my mother, and whenever she spoke of home, it was Titusville, Alabama. And I remember going, like, for example, going to visit Mother Scott, who lived not far from where I was living at the time, at like 18th and O Street or something like that. And I went and visited her, and being in her kitchen to me was almost exactly like being in my grandmother's kitchen. You know, the cleanliness of it and the orderliness of it, and even the smell of it, you know, just took me right to my grandmother's kitchen. And so I feel like, you know, spending time with people, even John Cephas, who was, I guess you could say, a generation older than me. You know, those folks remind me of what I thought, you know, home was. And I think that's a lot of the reason why I was drawn to them.
Well, that's really terrific. Do you have another tune inside of you to share with us tonight?
Well, I know
'Cause
Frank.
I know folks would love to hear more music. In addition to more stories, we could go for hours hearing your stories.
Yeah. Well, I know
It's a fascinating evening.
Yeah. Well, Frank, I don't want to disappoint you, but I think rather than doing Say His Name, which is a song that people will get to hear eventually. I mean, I have performed it. It's not really finished. It's a work in progress. And but I'm thinking maybe I'll just play a little bit of an instrumental, because I mean I did Evo Landing, which had no harmonica. So I think I'll do one that has harmonica and no vocal. I think I'll do a little bit of this guitar. I heard someone call it guitar harmonica rag. John and I, we just called it guitar rag. And it's one of the songs that we used to, that one and Burn Your Bridges were a couple of songs that we used to open a set with. And I used to like doing those songs kind of as a way of getting all the hot dogging and showing off out of my system, so that I could then settle down and just play some decent music. And so Guitar Rag was one of those songs. And so I think I'll just play a little bit of that one. Is that okay with you, Frank?
Absolutely.
All right. And like I say, next time you'll get to hear Say His Name. Okay, so here's a little bit of Guitar Rag.
Phil, we can't hear. Okay. Phil, you need to turn on original sound. Oh. Phil?
What?
We can't hear. You have to turn on original sound.
Original sound is is turned on.
Turned on, okay.
You're not hearing me at all?
We could hear it very faintly. I don't know, because it was so good sound earlier. I don't know if there's another tech person
Well,
here.
Be careful. We're gonna try and back it up a little bit.
Yeah, you might have been too close is what it seemed like. You were a little closer. That might have made the difference.
All right, so,
Let's try again.
all right then. Oh, you got a lot, I guess that's okay. Okay, you gotta tip it up some, because
Yeah,
they cannot.
I am.
All right, so. Can you hear me? Okay, I can't hear them now.
Try again. Try again. It was a little spotty, but maybe it will work.
That working?
It's cutting out too much.
Oh, good grief.
Unfortunately, I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
Because I could see that you sounded great.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah.
Well, sorry. I mean, earlier we weren't having that problem, right?
It could. What about your Wi-Fi? I don't think your Wi-Fi is having I usually get a notification. Someone asked if it was the Wi-Fi, but
I think I don't know. And I don't know what to do. I know because I know we the thing that I was doing with Saul, we went through a lot of hoops and we worked it out, and so I know definitely that my original sound thing is on. I don't, and other than that, I mean, we went way into the bowels of this iPad, and we couldn't figure out what to change. So I don't know.
well, we got to hear the 2 songs earlier, but that's okay. We're just gonna have to invite you to perform live sometime soon.
I would love to do that. I would love to be there with the Sheiks or with House Party, but would love to do that.
Right. Well, maybe you can before we close for the evening, maybe you two can share what you both have coming up. I imagine you're promoting the book and you're performing a lot. Hopefully now that things are opening up again. Things are suddenly opening up again. That's why we're virtual with Silver Spring Blues Week, but they just decided to open recently after we had already planned for a virtual week. So tell us what you have coming up.
Ooh, well, I'm starting to get some offers of live performances. I think the only one that is nailed down right now is in October, going out to Portland, Oregon for kind of for a long weekend gig. It's called Blues in the Gorge. I have some other virtual stuff. Unfortunately, I don't have it right in front of me right at the moment, but we also have the Augusta Heritage workshop that's coming up in July. That'll be virtual, and also the Puget Sound not the Puget Sound, I'm sorry, the Port Townsend Blues Week that's coming up. I believe that's the first week in August, I believe. But those things are I put on Facebook and on my website, so you can see them there.
Great. And what's your website?
It's just philwiggins.com.
Great. Okay, we'll check it out.
Yeah.
How about you, Frank?
Well, all of our book signings in 2020 were canceled. And we're hoping that some of them will return later in the year. We were going to go to the John Jackson Festival in Virginia, but that's not going to happen this year. So, you know, I, as a writer, I continue to write about music, and I've been doing a lot of writing about visual art. And I write for the Hammond Museum in New York. And so I write a lot about, like I said, visual art. So music and visual art, that's what I do. And hopefully when things get better, me and Phil will make the circuit and get to all the places that had canceled us. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're both vaccinated now, and so we're ready to go.
Yeah, we're ready. Somebody call us.
Yay, yay. I think they will be calling you for sure.
Yeah.
I think Lisa, no, you have your hand up? Lisa?
Looks
I
like
think
she-
Okay, I think her screen is frozen with her hand raised, but
Yeah.
anyway, this has,
It's done well. You know,
yeah,
we are learning from our publisher, the University Press of Mississippi, that the book is selling well, and you know, we're happy about that. And you know, I should say that the book is part of the very prestigious American-made music series. Our editor was Dr. David Evans. Dr. Barry Lee Pearson was our advisor on the project. And so there's lots of people really to thank along the way. If you get a chance to look at the book, you will find that we have more than 50 photos, almost all of them previously unpublished,
mhm.
and some of them real rarities. And you know, we are proud of the fact that this is a collaboration of many people. The photographers all contributed their photos, and none of them, you know, I mean, everybody was very gracious, and even some of my photos are in there. So I would say that things are going well, but we wish we got back to normal quick.
Yeah,
Yes.
we're looking
Same
forward to
here.
it.
And music and stories will help us get our lives back to normal, hopefully. It's been such a wonderful evening. I encourage everyone to get Sweet Bitter Blues on Amazon and to watch for these guys. We're going to be inviting them back for more because there's so much more with this story to share. It's been such a fabulous evening, Phil and Frank. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Let me just say one thing real fast.
Mhm.
The book right now, if you go to University Press of Mississippi, it's on sale as part of a special cultural event for 30% off. So
Oh,
go there instead of Amazon.
University Press
University Press of Mississippi.
Of Mississippi.
of
And-
Mississippi. Great.
And they are offering right now a 30% sale.
All right.
Great. Well, this has been a fabulous evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you
And
for having
thank you
us.
to Ida for being our
Ida,
host
thank
of Silver
you.
Spring Blues Week.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you both for hosting us. And Ida, we look forward to being on your show live, and we'll stay in touch about that. We'll work that out, and I will make sure that
Okay.
you get some of our recordings to play on your station.
And a
Oh,
book.
please do.
I'll send you a book.
And a book.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
I just want to say one thing. DC has never, as far as I know, has not been associated. I mean, people play blues in DC, but they don't consider it a blues town.
Right.
Correct
That's
me if
why we
I'm
wrote
right.
the book.
Say
That's
it
why,
again.
that's why we had to write the book. Because of
Yes.
that
And I'm
very
so
thing.
glad you did.
Because of
Yes.
that very thing.
Thank you.
And so we're going to be talking about your book, playing your music and other people's harmonica music in between the talks. So you guys listen up. We'll be talking about it on Facebook and other platforms. So I'm just so glad to be a part of this whole entire week. Don't forget tomorrow, we're gonna have the movie, Crossroads, and then the following day, comedy. We're gonna laugh our behinds out of the bed.
All right.
Yes, and then on Friday, we'll have the Archie Edwards Blues Heritage Ensemble, since Archie Edwards Foundation was such a big part of your life, Phil.
True.
So I hope you can tune in at 8 o'clock Friday night for that. And then the Bobby Thompson Band at 2 on Saturday, and in the studio with Winston Harris. Time for Change is the theme. And he also, Winston Harris is an African-American local artist, wonderful, wonderful artist. And he also explores the racial history and social justice issues in his work. And it's not to be missed. That's our final event on Saturday at 4 o'clock with Winston Harris. Thank you so much to all of our sponsors. So
Yes.
Montgomery County, Maryland State Arts, the Arts and Humanities of Montgomery County, Montgomery College, and also Club Pilates, the DC Blues Society, Archie Edwards Blues Heritage Foundation, and WPFWFM. Don't forget the blues. Thank you, Ida, and
Bye,
thank you so
everybody.
much,
Good night.
Frank Matheis and the phenomenal Phil Wiggins. Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you.
Bye-bye.
All right. See you later, Frank. Great seeing you.
Good to